Hi everyone, I'm Hayley Walsh. I'm an author of lighthearted fiction from Sydney, and I'd like to share with you a chapter from my lighthearted book called Not Dead Yet. Now, even though my books are all very lighthearted, this one does deal with some very serious issues around ageing. And in this one, we see Mary's long-term friend Barbara dealing with the day-to-day of living in a nursing home. Barbara couldn't quite reach her buzzer and had to wait until a nurse came past in order to ask for some more pain relief. She had been feeling pretty rotten for a couple of weeks and some blood tests had been ordered. The last time her GP came to visit, he gave her some awful news. Barbara's kidney function was getting worse and they were considering putting her on dialysis. Laying in a residential care home with your vital organs packing it in sure has a way of making you face your own mortality head on. Barbara was christened Catholic, like Mary, but she had not been a practicing Catholic for as long as she could remember. She wondered if now was the time to turn to religion. The thought of death simply terrified her. After finally receiving much-needed painkillers and being toileted before lights out, Barbara thought about her quality of life. She felt as if the daily routine of the facility in which she lived dictated her days. Although her nurses were very caring, there seemed to be a constant stench of death and despair permeating through the drab-coloured walls. It was always there, lurking in the background, waiting to claim its next victim. Her day started around 6:30 with the lights coming on. She was then showered at 7 and sat in her recliner by the window until morning tea came around at 9. If the nurses were not too busy, she would be off at the toilet again before the tea trolley rolled on by. Her room overlooked the car park, so she would sit and watch people come and go while waiting for a cup of coffee and a piece of cake. She could no longer read or watch TV thanks to her failing eyesight, the humble radio being her only company, until they wheeled her down to the communal dining room for lunch at around 11:30. There she would sit, feeling self-conscious of needing help to cut up her food because of the crippling arthritis in her joints, her knuckles swollen and stiff. She was often surrounded by confused residents who would require full assistance to eat while sporting adult-sized bibs over their clothing. Barbara feared death, but sometimes she feared living long enough to completely lose any shred of dignity she had left, even more. Her afternoon would sometimes be spent in the recreation room when she felt up to joining in the activities. Some days they battered a balloon around to help with dexterity and coordination, played a game of bingo, or had a sing-along to the piano. The only break from the monotony of Groundhog Day were the monthly bus trips, but sadly, Barbara hadn't been well enough to attend the last one. It was a trip to a local ballet school's annual review. Barbara was devastated that she had to miss out because of her ill health. Once the recreation activity drew to a close, she would be wheeled back to her room, where the nurses would help her change into her pyjamas at around 5. Dinner came at 5:30. After dinner, it was a last trip to the toilet, where the small incontinence pad would be swapped for a larger one resembling a nappy for the rest of the night. She would be in bed by 6 and it was lights out around 7. The painkillers finally worked their magic. Barbara glanced at her little bedside alarm clock. It was almost 7. Sure enough, the lights went out, with only dim lights in the hallway remaining switched on so the nurses could see where they were going. She rolled over and settled in for another long and lonely night. Thanks for listening.